Thomas Miller was living his dream, or so he thought. Every morning he left his suburban home in a sleek black suit, carrying the weight of deadlines, deals, and dollar signs. His neighbors envied his success, his colleagues admired his drive, and his family, well, they missed him. 8-year-old Lily Miller, his only daughter, stood at the living room window every morning, waving goodbye as his car disappeared down the street. She adored her father, but to her he felt more like a fleeting shadow than a constant presence. "Daddy's working for our future," her mother Emily would explain every time Lily asked why her father didn't play with her or read her bedtime stories anymore. But to Lily, the future didn't matter. All she wanted was her dad. Now, one rainy evening, Lily sat cross-legged on the floor of her room, crayons scattered around her. She had been working on a special project, a drawing of her family. In the picture, she drew herself holding hands with her mother. Her father stood at a distance, seated at his desk with his back to them. When the picture was done, she beamed with pride. "Daddy will love this," she thought. She ran to his home office, clutching the drawing. Thomas was seated at his desk, surrounded by a fortress of papers and glowing screens. His phone was pressed to his ear, and his laptop keys clicked furiously. "Daddy!" Lily chirped, holding up her drawing. "Not now, Lily," he said without looking up. "But it's important," she insisted, her voice tinged with desperation. Thomas glanced at her briefly. "That's nice, sweetheart," he muttered before turning back to his screen. Lily's face fell. She stared at her father, hoping he might change his mind, but his attention was already gone. Slowly, she folded the drawing in half and walked back to her room. Emily noticed her daughter's slumped shoulders as she passed. "What's wrong, honey?" she asked. "Nothing," Lily said quietly, slipping the folded paper into her treasure box. Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed, Emily confronted Thomas. "Do you even realize how much she misses you?" she said, arms crossed. "I'm doing all this for her." Thomas shot back, frustrated. "So she can have everything she needs." "She doesn't need your money, Thomas. She needs you, your time, your attention. You're here, but you're not here." Her words hit him like a punch to the gut, but Thomas brushed them off. "She'll understand when she's older," he muttered. But deep down, a small voice whispered, "What if she doesn't?" The next few days passed in a blur of conference calls and client meetings. Thomas barely noticed Lily's absence from his routine. She no longer brought her drawings to him or asked him to play. Instead, she quietly stayed in her room, working on her little projects. One Saturday morning, as Thomas was sipping his coffee and scrolling through emails, Emily sat across from him at the kitchen table. "Thomas, it's getting worse," she said, her voice firm. He glanced up, frowning. "What's getting worse?" "Lily, she stopped trying. She doesn't ask for your attention anymore because she's given up." Thomas felt a twinge of guilt, but he quickly masked it with defensiveness. "I'm doing my best, Emily. I can't just drop everything." Emily sighed. "One day you'll look back and realize you missed it all. The recitals, the bedtime stories, the little moments that mean everything to her. And by then, it'll be too late." Her words stuck with him, haunting him as he returned to his laptop. That afternoon, Thomas was clearing some old files when he accidentally knocked over a small wooden box sitting on a shelf. Papers and drawings spilled onto the floor. He bent down to gather them, only to freeze when he saw what they were. Lily's drawings. Each one told a silent story. In one, she had drawn herself at a school play with an empty chair labeled Dad in the audience. In another, she sat alone at a picnic, her head bowed. And then there was the drawing she had shown him, the one with him seated at his desk, oblivious to her. A lump formed in his throat as he flipped through the pictures. These weren't just innocent drawings. They were reflections of how she saw their relationship. Distant, fragmented, incomplete. For the first time in years, Thomas felt something he couldn't ignore. Guilt and fear. That evening, he knocked gently on Lily's door. She was sitting on her bed coloring. She looked up, surprised. "Hey, sweetheart," he said softly. "Can I come in?" She nodded, her expression cautious. Thomas sat beside her, holding one of her drawings. "Lily, I found these. They're beautiful. But they made me realize something." "What?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been a bad dad," he admitted, his voice breaking. I've been so busy with work that I forgot what really matters. I forgot you. Lily stared at him, her big brown eyes filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. Does that mean you'll play with me now? Thomas smiled, his eyes misty. Not just play. I want to do everything with you. Starting tomorrow, it's Daddy-Daughter Day. You plan it, and I'll be there. No work, no phone, just us. Her face lit up with a joy he hadn't seen in years. Really? Really? The next morning, Thomas woke up to find Lily waiting eagerly in the living room, her list in hand. First, we go to the park. Then we bake cookies. And then, I'll show you my secret fort. Thomas chuckled. Sounds perfect. Let's do it. At the park, they flew kites, with Lily's laughter ringing through the air. Thomas realized he hadn't laughed like this in years. They raced each other, rolled on the grass, and shared ice cream, even though it dripped all over their hands. Back home, they baked cookies, covering the kitchen in flour and chocolate. When the cookies were in the oven, Lily led him to her secret fort, a cozy little space she had built under the stairs, filled with pillows, fairy lights, and her treasure box. She opened the box and handed him her folded drawing. I was sad when I made this, she said quietly. Thomas unfolded it and stared at the picture of him at his desk while she stood alone. Tears welled up in his eyes. I'm so sorry, Lily. I promise you'll never feel this way again. That night, as he tucked her into bed, she hugged him tightly. This was the best day ever, Daddy, she whispered. No, sweetheart, he said, kissing her forehead. This was the best day for me. From that day forward, Thomas made a vow to prioritize what truly mattered. He set boundaries at work, turned off his phone during family time, and never missed another school event. Years later, as Lily prepared to leave for college, she handed Thomas the treasure box. Inside were all the drawings she had saved over the years. Keep these, she said. They're reminders of the best days of my life. Thomas smiled, holding back tears. No, Lily, they're reminders of the best lesson I ever learned, how to love the little things that truly matter.